Go ahead.
It's August 20th, 2024, and I'm with Mr. John J. Jeckovich, and they're reading his book, Their Mother's Sons. And Mr. Jeckovich lives by this motto: yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift. Mr. Jeckovich is knocking on the door of 100. He's in excellent health and perfect shape. He can read the newspapers without any glasses at all, and is sharp as a tack. What's your dog tag number, Mr. Jeckovich?
4201965.
Okay, that's the code that I can start reading your book. Did you want to read it today, or you want me to?
No, go ahead, read it. Go ahead.
Do you want to make any comments about your book before?
My book?
You want to make
It's an autobiography of me.
All right. And who did you dedicate the book to?
Who did I dedicate it to? My dear wife, probably.
That's what you did. And it was a very interesting book, 900 pages. And it takes you from kindergarten to retirement. Kindergarten to retirement. And it's very interesting. And we're interviewing Mr. John Jeckovich, World War II combat veteran. And the reason why I stress the word combat veteran, because there's not too many combat veterans left. For example, 16,400,000 young men and women were in the services during World War II. Out of those 16,400,000, 16,300,000 of these young men and women are gone. There's approximately 100,000 left, but the interesting point, there's only 8,000 combat vets left. Only 8,000. All the rest were rear echelon, but there's still not many of them, because almost everyone from World War II that was in the service is in the late hundreds. And we're losing a man at a rate of 135 a day. So if you have any text messages for Mr. Jeckovich, you can text this number, 407-366-0000, 407-366-0000, or if you're from the wonderful state of South Carolina, 407-366-0000, 407-366-0000. Any messages you text will be personally answered by Mr. Jeckovich. Any questions of any nature. How often do you get to talk directly to a World War II vet? This is not a rear echelon man. This is front lines. Battle of the Bulge. Shot in the shoulder by a sniper. Shrapnel still in his body. Shrapnel still in his body. Trench foot. Frostbite. He's a walking, talking miracle. Here we go. I'll start reading his book. He left Paris a few weeks ago, out of the hospital recovering from wounds. They fixed him to somewhat degree. They bandaged him up, and they basically said, if your index finger could pull the trigger of a machine gun, and if you could walk, you're fit for duty. Isn't that what they said? Fit for duty.
Yeah.
Fit for duty. So now Mr. Jeckovich is back on the front of the Battle of Bulge, and he's been doing reconnaissance missions with Rangers crossing the Rhine in a little rubber raft and getting into on the German side and quietly moving around on the behind enemy lines and seeing what the Germans are doing. What equipment do they have out? He recently found a small hut where there was 10 or 12 Germans around it, and that was their listening post. Their listening post was to pick up the Americans' information on the other side of the Rhine. And so at one time, several missions that Mr. Jeckovich did, they sent him out with about 4 or 5 other soldiers, stuck him on a raft, got across behind enemy lines after they crossed the Rhine, and they got a lot of good data. And then Mr. Jeckovich told his troops to stay behind. I'm going to go forward and see what else I could find. And he found some additional information following a squad of German soldiers. And he told his team that if he's not back in 10 minutes, take the raft and go. Well, fortunately, Mr. Jeckovich was back on time, and they all loaded up in the raft they had, which are actually sitting ducks going across the Rhine River in a raft, sitting ducks. But luckily they made it, and they got back about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and they went directly to the lieutenant's little tent, and they woke up the lieutenant, and told him what they found. And the lieutenant basically yawned and went back to bed. And Mr. Jeckovich said, why the hell did I risk my life and all the members of my team when the good information we gathered, the lieutenant didn't act upon?
Yeah.
He didn't act upon it, right?
Yeah.
Risk everyone's life. Did you see much of that lieutenant after that?
So?
That lieutenant, did you see much of him after that?
No.
No?
No.
So he wasn't much of a combat soldier.
No.
Yeah, there we go. We would go from building to building, the riflemen probing first, and would follow up with the firepower. It was a slow pedestrian pace, which drained our senses, as we had to be on constant alert for snipers and the counterattacks. The nights were the most difficult, for there was no set established line. The enemy could double back and occupy the next building, which the nights were the most difficult, for there is no set established line. The enemy could double back and occupy the next building, which you had just cleared previously. So if you just cleared a building that was safe to go into, you could turn around in 10 minutes and be occupied by the Germans again.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, page 441. We ate our rations on the run, slept very little, and did little moving about at night. In the darkness, too many men shot first and investigated later. Wandering about was strictly forbidden. Getting lost was likened to the forest. It was a personal problem, no matter who would venture out to look for you. It was like fighting in a maze, and no one knew the way out. So all those woods was like a maze, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The riflemen would fire their bazookas point blank into a second-story window of the factory, and we would immediately shower the area with 30 caliber tracer and armor-piercing rounds. So basically, the reason why you didn't like to go in buildings, because once the firepower start hitting that building, you're done.
Yeah.
You're not going to get out alive, right? You didn't
Yeah,
want
they got you zeroed in.
you didn't want to go in any buildings, right?
No.
No. No buildings for Mr. Jeckovich. Tunnel was darting between the buildings, returning the much-needed ammo when he was fired upon by a sniper. As he dodged the buildings, the sniper outguessed him and caught him in the driveway of a warehouse. The sniper hit him in the leg and shoulder, and we pulled him to safety. I could see his wounds were pretty serious. Luckily, a medic was nearby and stopped the bleeding and the more serious wound in his leg. He was evacuated to the rear, and we never saw him again or knew how he eventually made out. Do you remember Tuttle?
Yeah,
Tuttle? He was a green recruit, right?
yeah.
Yeah. I was under strength in the squad, as was the entire platoon and company. I knew they were aware of this back at the company CP, and what they did about it is another matter. That night we got lucky and routed a bunch of Germans out of a large building. We came to find out it was a large synthetic rubber factory making war material. What kind of materials could they make out of rubber for the war?
Rubber?
Yeah, tires?
Well, parts of tanks, parts of jeeps,
So you remember?
motorcycles.
Do you remember being in that rubber building?
Yeah.
How big was it?
Well, it was a pretty big building, 2-story.
I'm surprised it wasn't bombed by now.
Pardon?
I'm surprised it wasn't bombed. Along the capture of the factory, two neighboring slave labor camps containing 3,000 slave laborers were also liberated. The conditions the slave laborers worked and lived in was appalling. They all looked starved, and most suffered from tuberculosis and malnutrition. Where were these 3,000 slaves from?
Pardon?
Where were these 3,000 slaves from? What country?
Slaves?
You said 3,000 slave laborers.
They were prisoners.
They were prisoners?
They were prisoners.
Okay.
Prisoners of war.
But you call them slave laborers.
Yeah.
So they worked all the time. After capturing the plant and freeing the slave laborers, the 2nd Battalion on the captured town of Sickenmühl. It seemed as we did not even stop to catch our breath, let alone eat or change our wet clothing. As it got warmer and the weather turned more damp, the rain seemed as it would never stop. We were all soaked thoroughly and looked forward to the warm place, some hot food, and a change of clothing. Eventually, the higher-ups did not see it that way, perhaps because they were not out in the weather all the time. Company E assaulted the town of Sickenmühl from the right, and the F Company on the left. Both companies received small arm fire and later heavy artillery, mortar, and direct fire from anti-tank weapons. Calhoun kept firing, irrespective of the incoming fire, and several times I had to signal him to slow down his rate of fire. The ammo barrels could not keep up, and I was so preoccupied with spotting new firing positions for the rest of the platoon, trying to keep ahead of the German anti-tank guns. I lost track of the ammo bearers. One got hit, and I felt bad, for I was not watching them as closely as I should have. I did not know him too well, and I probably spoke to him once or twice. The medic told him later that his wound was serious enough for him to be evacuated to England and perhaps the States. Company F, in considerable maneuvering, finally outflanked the town from the north and entered the outskirts, Company E could not cross the Sycamore River as they were pinned down, and Company G was sent in to make a deep flanking movement from the right, and our squad was ordered to accompany them. Calhoun was eager for the fight, and I admired his spirit. We selected a position, and the G Company filtered through it. We abandoned it and followed them as they moved toward the village. After a fierce fight, Companies E, F, and G were in the village, or what was left of it. We set up a defensive position for the night. We also set up a roadblock on the edge of town, taking over the former German bunker, which was suited for 2 men. I set up a rotating guard roster so the remaining platoon members could warm up and change their wet clothes. Post joined us after the town and was taken, and luckily everyone had a change of clothing in the trailer. The same applied to the rest of the platoon, what was left of it. We were billeted in a small farmhouse near the edge of town, not too far from our gun positions. I had no idea where the civilians who were occupied it, but after clearing the entire farmhouse, we set up a house inside. Shepard got a roaring fire going in the fireplace as we settled down in our first warm billeted in a long time. Everyone got more cheery outlook on our situation. There was even talk of hot chow in the morning and maybe even mail call afterwards. Since we were short-handed in the platoon, I told Shepard, who would be on duty at 0300 hours, to wake me up and I would take it until dawn. Usually there would be 2 men on the roadblock, but since Company E had all the men all around us, I thought the men needed a rest and I would they could stand alone. At 3:15 hours, Shepard was shaking me from a deep rest, and I would stand at it alone. For a few seconds, I did not know where I was. The entire room was warm and comfortable, and I did not want to leave its cozy haven. As I walked to the roadblock in the stillness of night, I thought it would be a long time before dawn. I relieved the man, ammo bearer, whom I had vaguely knew. We just waved at each other as he told me everything was quiet. I settled in the position and wondered how I was going to get through the next several hours without talking to someone to keep me awake. I noticed there was a foxhole to my immediate right, about 200 yards. I could see someone moving every now and then, and I figured it was E Company. Wow. I had changed my wet clothes and had dried my boots pretty much in the front of the fire before I got some sleep. It was not cold, but there was a decided chill in the air, more dampness and coldness. Suddenly I thought of Anne and wondered what she was doing at this exact moment. I calculated the time difference between here and the States. Minutes?
Yeah.
And she would just be
10.
She would just be getting home from school. I wondered how she looked and if she had changed any. I thought of the many times I had met her after school and how she looked and what she would say to me as she greeted me. I stood there looking out into the darkness, going over in my mind what I would have done differently between Ann and me. There was still no other solution to my dilemma, and it'll be years later before I can look back at it objectively and say this is what I should have done differently. The time went surprisingly fast, and I watched the dawn finally overtake the darkness. It appeared that it would be another wet, dreary day with no sunshine anywhere. Calhoun relieved me on the gun and was surprised since no one awoke him. He stated that he had been awake for over an hour. A bad dream had interrupted his sleep. He dreamed that he had been shot. I had no sooner gotten to the billets than a runner from the CP came out and told me to prepare to move out right after chow. So you're always on the go there.
Yeah.
Every day was different. Post came up shortly with hot, steaming pancakes, syrup and plenty of steaming hot coffee, and several Marmite cans. I must have eaten over a dozen hotcakes and drunk several cups of coffee. We washed our mess kits in a farmhouse kitchen, each taking turns to pump at the sink. So even though the farmhouse was abandoned, the kitchen sink pump still worked.
Oh, yeah.
What was your record hotcakes?
What was what?
What was your record number of hotcakes you ate?
Oh, that was toy, but they were small. They were small.
Did you have good syrup?
They had syrup. They had syrup. They had a quart of syrup there.
So even though these farmhouses were abandoned, the pump water system in the kitchen still worked.
Yeah, you pump it. Yeah, you pumped it. And then they had stuff in the kitchen and the cupboards and everything.
All their pots and pans?
Yeah, they had food in the cupboard.
I wonder where the occupants moved to.
They evacuated. They evacuated. They were Germans. They were German civilians.
Oh, so they had to get out.
Yeah, yeah.
I wonder if they ever came back.
Probably a year later, and then never returned because they got killed or whatever.
Could you imagine how much work they'd have to do on the farmhouse?
The what?
If they did not get killed and they made it back to their own farmhouse, could you imagine how much work would be needed to bring the farmhouse back?
Oh, yeah, yeah. If they did it.
Yeah. It brought back memories of doing the exact same thing at Renee's house. I missed her very much, and it was only the precarious and deadly tempo of our present life that kept her out of my heart and thoughts. Division headquarters from Ulu to Marl and the rest of the house. I missed her very much, and it was only Division headquarters moved from Malo to Marl, and the rest of the division continued to attack at 0800 hours, with the objective of paralleling the Dortmund-Enns Canal and about midway through the Dive-Hard Forest to the south of Haltern. The 291st Infantry was on the left, and attaining its objective will clear the Die-Hard Forest and the meeting only a light resistance. Later the same day, 4 88mm and 2 75mm guns were overrun by the reconnaissance troop with a platoon of the 74th 744 Tank Battalion. They also engaged 4 German tanks near Ready, but no casualties were inflicted or received. We were moving from sector to sector, first with E Company, then with F Company, or G Company. Whenever the resistance was the greatest, in whichever section of heavy weapons was the closest. Despite the rain and poor visibility, we continued our momentum and swept the enemy from the west bank of the Dortmund-Ems Canal. Patrol were active at the division level, but luckily we were so occupied with assisting the rifle companies that they could not pull us off the duty and put us on patrol. We had just cleared the northwest section of Datteln by 700 hours, and the next day it had rained all night and were all soaked to the bone. We had received heavy artillery and mortar fire from Datteln, and as we encircled it, the forward rifle platoon came under direct fire by 2 German 40 anti-aircraft guns as they advanced up the road. Do you remember what a German 40 millimeter anti-aircraft gun looks like?
Oh, yeah, it's big, it's big.
Describe it to me.
Huh?
Describe it to me.
It's on wheels. It's on wheels. They can hook it onto the Jeep or anything. Pull it around.
So that's something you have to move with the Jeep.
Yeah.
Did that weapon do a lot of damage?
Right?
Did that weapon do a lot of damage?
Oh, yeah. If they could get them there.
Yeah.
But if that's snow in there, they get stuck in the snow and stuff, and that's it.
And then what do they do with it?
They even do something else to get the hell out of there. Or destroy it, and that's it.
And leave it there. Wow. Minutes?
Rough duty, that was rough duty, rough duty.
73.
Cold as hell.
It was cold.
Oh, minutes.
3.
Okay, let me find one of that. Direct fire from 2 German 40 millimeter anti-aircraft tank guns that advanced up the road. The firing was coming from our right 100 yards from where I had just positioned one of our guns. What was the distance of the shell of an anti-aircraft gun? How far could it go?
An aircraft gun, a missile?
40 millimeter anti-aircraft gun.
Probably a couple of miles.
And what distance was it accurate at?
Probably a mile and a half.
They must have done a lot of damage. The firing was coming from our right 100 yards from where I had just positioned one of our guns. Calhoun was caught in its deadly fire. Several rounds hit him, ricocheting off the ground. I was scouting another gun position and I turned. As I hugged the ground, I saw Calhoun take a direct hit to his upper body. I immediately crawled to where he was laying, but he was gone. The 40 millimeter shell had hit him in the upper chest area and made a large hole as it exited his body. I thought of the dream he had the other night and the premonition he had of getting shot. I felt terrible of losing Calhoun, and his death reminded me of Fink and how devastated I was. Show me how big a 40 millimeter bullet is, or shell is. How big is it?
What, a shell?
Yeah, 40 millimeter anti-aircraft.
Shell?
Yeah.
Shell's probably twice that rad right here, right
Like
here.
this?
Yeah.
Like this?
No, it wasn't that thick, it was long. Yeah, that's it, yeah,
And so,
yeah.
so this soldier took a direct hit.
Yeah,
Well,
took his half body off.
There's no chance.
no, ripped them apart.
Is that rare they take a direct hit with an anti-aircraft weapon? Mostly that would scatter
That
around.
lost half the body.
Yeah.
This is where I lost half my hip, lost my
Okay.
whole hip.
Anti-aircraft?
Yeah,
Minutes?
20 seconds.
Oh, wow. So taking a direct hit was,
they shear the hell out of you.
oh, yeah. Wow. That's amazing. How many seconds?
And then they're armor piercing.
Armor piercing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for the tanks, For the tanks. Is that it?